What if I told you a regular man discovered a glitch that let him pull infinite money out of thin air, and the bank didn't notice for months? This isn't a movie, this actually happened. For 4.5 months, a 29-year-old barman named Dan Saunders lived this fantasy. He stumbled upon a loophole in the National Australia Bank's system that allowed him to withdraw $1.6 million that didn't exist. He threw parties for strangers. He hired private islands. He lived like a billionaire. But here's the thing. Dan didn't hack the mainframe. He wasn't a coding genius. He was just a guy who wanted another beer. February 2011, Wangaratta, Australia. It's a quiet Wednesday night and Dan Saunders is out with friends. They're having a good time, the rounds are flowing, but eventually the inevitable happens. Dan looks in his wallet. Empty. He checks his savings account on his phone. Zero. He checks his credit account. Maybe enough for a McFlurry, but definitely not a round of beers. But Dan, being the optimistic guy he is, walks across the street to a National Australia Bank ATM anyway. He puts his card in. He tries to transfer $200 from his credit account to his savings account so he can withdraw it. The screen flashes a message, "System currently unavailable." But then, something weird happens. The ATM spits out the card, cancels the transaction, and then asks, "Would you like a balance inquiry?" Dan presses yes. The screen says, "Savings $200. Wait, it said the system was down. It said the transfer failed, yet the money was there. Dan hits withdraw, whir, click, click. 2 crisp $100 bills slide out. He goes back to the bar. He buys the round. He's the hero, but in the back of his mind, the gears are turning. Later that night, walking home, he passes the ATM again. He tries it again. Transfer $200. Transaction cancelled. Balance inquiry $200 added. Withdraw. It works. Here is what Dan didn't know at the time. Every night between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., the bank's ATMs went offline for maintenance. They disconnected from the main banking network. During this window, the ATM couldn't actually check if Dan had the money. It was operating on a trust system. It assumed that if Dan said he was moving money, the money existed. It would record the transaction to be settled the next morning when the system came back online. Dan had found a 2-hour window where the laws of mathematics didn't apply. Most of us, if we found $400, would keep it and shut up. But Dan was curious. The next morning he checked his bank app. The money he withdrew was gone from his account, leaving him in negative balance. The bank had caught up. The glitch was over. But Dan had a theory. If the system only updates once every 24 hours, what if he just did it again before the update happened? The next night, he goes back. He transfers more money to cover the negative balance, plus a little extra. The ATM accepts it. Think of it like this. Dan was digging a hole. But before the bank could see how deep the hole was, he dug a slightly bigger hole to fill the first one. As long as he kept transferring non-existent money every single night between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., the bank's computer never registered that he was broke. He was surfing just ahead of the wave. For the first few weeks, he kept it small, paying off a few bills, buying better groceries. But you can only hold a winning lottery ticket for so long before you want to cash it. One night, Dan takes a deep breath. He types in $2,000. Whir, click, cash. He types in $4,000. Whir, click, cash. This is where the story turns into The Wolf of Wall Street, but without the stock fraud. Dan started spending, and he wasn't quiet about it. He moved to Melbourne. He started eating at the finest restaurants, not just for him, but for everyone in the restaurant. He'd walk into a bar, shout, "Drinks are on me," and drop $5,000 on the counter. He chartered private jets just to go for lunch. He hired a private helicopter to take him to a hotel because he didn't feel like taking a cab. People started asking questions. Who is this guy? Is he a pro poker player? An investment banker? A crypto time traveler? Dan told them he was a professional gambler or an investment banker. People believed him because, well, money talks. But there was a weird psychology to his spending. He wasn't just buying Ferraris, he was desperate for connection. He paid off his friend's university tuition. He paid for a friend's semester in France. He was buying love, he was buying company, but mostly he was buying distractions. Because every single night the clock was ticking. Remember the glitch? It required maintenance. Dan had to be at an ATM between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. every single night. If he missed a night, the system would catch up. The negative balance would finalize. The police would come. He was a prisoner of his own fortune. Imagine the stress. You are $100,000 in debt, then $500,000, then $1 million. You are technically robbing a bank, but you're doing it in slow motion, day by day. Dan started having nightmares. He stopped sleeping. He'd hear a siren outside his hotel room and freeze, waiting for the SWAT team to kick down the door. It got so bad that Dan actually went to see a psychologist. He sat down and told the shrink everything. "I'm stealing millions from the bank using an ATM glitch. I feel guilty. I can't stop." The psychologist didn't believe him. They thought he was delusional. They actually tried to medicate him for psychosis. That's how unbelievable this was. Even the experts thought he was making it up. By June 2011, Dan had stolen approximately $1.6 million. He was exhausted. The high life wasn't fun anymore. It was a job, a stressful, illegal job. So Dan did something that almost no criminal in history ever does. He decided to stop. Dan realized something terrifying. The bank was too big to notice or too embarrassed to admit it, so Dan forced their hand. He called the newspapers. He went on national television, a current affair, and told the entire country, face to camera, exactly what he did. "I have $1.6 million of the bank's money. Come and get me." It still took 3 years for the arrest warrant to come through. In 2014, Dan was finally charged with 111 counts of fraud and theft. He was sentenced to a year behind bars. He served his time. He paid his debt to society, even if he couldn't pay the debt to the bank. Today, Dan is back in the real world. He works in a restaurant. He earns an honest wage. The private jets are gone, the escorts are gone, but for 4 months, he was the king of Wangaratta. The National Australia Bank patched the glitch immediately after the story broke. They never officially disclosed exactly how much was lost or who else might have found it. But if you found the glitch, be honest, how far would you have gone before you stopped? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.